Hello and welcome to Community Closeups, a webinar series highlighting the unique and talented people in our community. My name is Bill Cameron, and with me, my good friend, co-host David Warner. How's it
Hi,
going,
everybody.
Dave?
Good. Today we have with us Heather Newman, an Office Apps and Services MVP. Welcome, Heather. Thank you for being a guest today.
Hi, fellas. Hello, everyone.
Why don't you start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure, be happy to. Let's see. I'm coming to you today from Marina Del Rey, California, and love it down here. It's a little blustery, but all is good. I originally come from the Midwest. I was born in Michigan and did formative years in Illinois and Indiana, high school in Wheaton, go Tigers. Let's see, after a year of college at Illinois State, I traversed out to Seattle. And so I've been on the West Coast since the early 90s. I went to the University of Washington School of Drama. I was a theater major there. And then I lived in Dallas for a little while, Texas, yes. And then back to Seattle to start a theater company. And I then started working at Microsoft on a little startup internally that was codenamed Tahoe, which we all know as SharePoint. So that was a long time ago. And so I was on the original SharePoint marketing team back in 2001. So I got to do a lot of firsts with that team working for Jeff Teeper. We created the SharePoint conference. I onboarded the first 60 partners to the SharePoint partner ecosystem. Did all kinds of fun and wonderful, crazy things that he said yes to, which was awesome. He never said no to all these weird swag things and wearing kilts and bringing Ferraris around and hydroplanes and all kinds of great jazz. And so I did that for a long time.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And,
I think you missed something, Dave.
Yeah,
you were around for that.
Oh, I know. It was super fun. I started doing that. My first job there was case studies. The first 150 case studies on SharePoint and back at the time, and SharePoint Team Services. So, which I deleted off the server on accident and made it so that a undo and recycle bin were created in SharePoint. So you're all very welcome for that.
Thank you.
Yes. And then I traversed into event management for the Office and SharePoint teams. And that's when I became a logistics owner. And I did probably every event where we were present, whether it was a Microsoft produced event or a third party, for about 8 years. So 8 tours of duty with a bunch of gals that my team, my mavens, that ran around with me and ran around the world and did that, which was super fun. And then I worked at AvePoint for a while as their SVP of global marketing, ran around the world a little bit more, building their brand and doing all kinds of great marketing work. And then left there and started Content Panda, which I own, which is a in-context and on-demand help and training app for Office 365 and SharePoint, and that's been around for about 5 years. And then I've owned Creative Maven, which is my consulting business, for 12 years, and that still works as a strategic marketing consultancy for technology and then entertainment. So like what else? Oh, and I host a podcast called Mavens Do It Better. And yep, I'm an MVP and I run around talking about diversity and inclusion around the world, and I speak a lot and I travel a lot, and yeah, and I sleep. I actually do sleep.
I was going to say, I wasn't sure how that actually happens. Hours of free time.
I know. I don't know if that was me that binged or you all that binged. I was like, I thought I turned everything off. So anyway.
So basically, you have no experience, is what you think.
Well, certain things. I mean, I haven't done everything. I don't know how to do jujitsu. So there you go. There's something.
So you do travel a lot, right?
We do.
We had to fill out the questionnaire. 3 of your favorite places with New Orleans, New York City, and London.
Yes.
Any particular order there?
Oh gosh, that's tough. I would say that I always say that New Orleans is my favorite, and I think that's true for sure. I spend a lot of time in New York, and then I don't get to London as much as I want. New Orleans, I just think is so rich in so many things, food and music, and the people are lovely, and I love the feeling when I get there and I get off the plane. It's a little balmy and it smells good, and it's just I don't go to Bourbon Street. That's not what it's about for me. I love all of the the Faubourg Marigny and the Garden District and all the other trappings of the history that are there. And I'm a big live music fan, and I love the New Orleans sound. And so John Boutte is one of his voice. I find him, I've written about him. I love his stuff. He kind of took over where Sam Cooke, who passed away, in a lot of his songs and music. So I love that. And I don't know, the hustle and bustle of New York City is my jam, and I feel super comfortable there. And so I spend a lot of time there. People think I live in New York a lot of the time because I spend so much time there. And London's just a theater mecca like New York. That's the other thing. I was a theater major, so I have a huge, affinity for going to see plays, and tons of friends in the theatrical communities in both of those cities. And so I love going to visit that. So yeah, fun.
Cool. Any particular favorite Broadway musical or show or anything like that like maybe is you always have to go see, or if it's there you have to see it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a great question. My first opening night Broadway show was Sideshow, which actually, funnily enough, Dan Holm, who works at Microsoft, who runs SharePoint and OneDrive, he was a theater major. Many people don't know that. And so
Really?
Dan and I share a love of that. And he ended up giving me his ticket to go to the Broadway opening because he couldn't be there. And so it was like bucket list city for me. So that was really special.
That's cool.
It was really neat. I think The Lion King also is just a fan favorite, pleasure to go see. I am also about to go see Kinky Boots when I go back to New York soon. And that show's closing and is actually produced by a really good friend of mine who's going to be on my podcast, Jim Kierstead. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and in London, I'm always going for something like where I can see like Dame Judi Dench, or, like just the heroes of the theater, so I'm always looking for those little shows that they're in that are just so awesome. So
I want to talk about the car, because there's your favorite car is a Bugatti, or your dream car, I should say. Not your favorite, you probably don't own one, but that's one of my top cars too. I'm a very big car guy. And what made you choose the Bugatti over any other car in the world?
Well, it's funny that to me it's connected to art. There's an artist named Tamara de Lempicka, and she has this really cool. I was like, I could, if I had like detached, I could go run and get it because I have a picture of it. But you can maybe show it. But it's a woman in a green Bugatti, and it's her sort of face. Remember the it was Madonna's video for Express Yourself, and all the women that were in that one? That's like of the ilk of Tamara de Lempicka. And I'm an art nut too. I love museums. I actually work from the MoMA in New York all the time. Like, it's my secret place to go because they have awesome Wi-Fi and a cafe, and you can just sit in there and do your conference calls and then like go walk through. It's so awesome. But I shouldn't tell that.
Good tip.
Yeah, I know, right? But anyway, I've always loved that painting, and then I've always loved cars. And my uncle had a purple sparkly dune buggy that he used to drive us around, and he worked on cars and stuff. And so I just always have loved the look of a Bugatti, and I like that word. It sounds awesome in the mouth too. Like, being a theater person, you're like, what is it, like a Bugatti, So I think it has to do with that, and I just think they're absolutely beautiful, and I love it that they're still making them. That it's a a high end, sort of more like a fancy pants car, but I think we're driving around in one of those would just be super slick. So
they just announced the Noir the last couple of days or something, right? I saw a bunch of news on that at a reasonable price of 12 point something million.
Oh, I know. They're ridiculous. Yeah.
And they said that that's not including the tax. Like, once you get to tax, 16 million. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even afford the tax.
We need to round up a little bit there. Yeah, no, I'm a member of the Peterson Museum, which is here in Los Angeles. Have you been to that? It's awesome.
Okay.
So my friend of mine used to be the CMO of it. The Peterson's right downtown. It's on Wilshire, and they just did like this fancy remodel of the whole thing. It is state of the art. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it has it's car collections, and they do all kinds of really cool installations. But they have this thing that's called the Vault. Okay, and I got to take I took Alistair Pugin, who's another Microsoft MVP. He was in town, and he loves cars, and so I took him to that, and we went and looked, and they have two Bugattis down there. by the by. So if you like a Bugatti, there's a couple down there, and I was just like, oh my God, and then they actually have an installation that's coming in conjunction with Comic-Con where they're doing Hollywood cars and comics and all of that sort of thing. And that's coming. I just saw that they announced that. But the Peterson Museum is fantastic if you're a car buff. It's a great place here in Los Angeles. So, yeah.
Well, when I visit you, Dave, I'll have to go check it out.
But where are you located? Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Denver.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on. Neato. Okay.
So we're trying to get him out for SharePoint Saturday in Los Angeles. So
yeah, we got to plan that.
Whatever he wants. Yep.
I know. Everybody, we are picking a date and we're meeting next week. So coming soon, SharePoint LA for 2019 for sure. So, yep.
So you like to go fast. I noticed that we asked a question around how you consider the best way to start your day. And I thought this was kind of funny because it's like 0 to 100, I thought, when I pictured this in my mind. Walk on the beach, meditation, and lots of coffee. Those are two like completely opposite like effects on your body, right? So you must go from meditation to bam, full speed.
That's true. I think there's something about I do like my quiet time in the morning to get centered and also to sort of just get rid of some things, like writing and reading and all of that. And then meditation to me is just the way to connect to your creativity, your higher self, subconsciousness, and all of that stuff. And then, I go fast. I run 2 businesses and everything I do with MVP and the writing and podcasting and all of that stuff. And I love it. And I keep up with it only because I have amazing people on my team helping me. It's not just me. I have a couple of other folks that help. So, but, and I do love coffee. I've lived in Seattle for a really long time. So it's like, to me, Starbucks, I love it. It was, same year I was born, Starbucks started. I actually opened stores in Dallas, Texas back in the day when Starbucks was brand new back in the 90s and stuff. So yeah, I love a good coffee. And everybody's probably like, Starbucks is the worst. I'm like, I like all kinds of coffee, but I definitely.
You're an equal opportunist for coffee, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I like nothing better than somebody handing me a cup of coffee. So that always makes me really happy too. So
good to know then, right? Good to know.
Yes.
Conversation starter maybe?
Yes. Almond milk, no sugar. Let's be clear. Although I love it, but I drink it in New York. How they drink it, I take it because when you order coffee in New York, it comes with milk and sugar, right? So I drink it how they do it wherever I am, depending.
When in Rome.
Yes, exactly. When in Rome or Brooklyn, baby, it's all good. Yeah.
So you have been in the SharePoint community, as you mentioned, from the very beginning, really, since it was codenamed Tahoe.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is it to see, having come from the inside now to being, MVP and really ingrained in the community, and just see the maturity and the growth? Like, what has that been like?
It's so cool. I tell people all the time, this ride I've been on is awesome and I'm not getting off. It's really, it's an honor, and it's been fun to watch something grow from truly a startup. I mean, more money most likely than most startups have when they're starting out, but you never know, if something's going to take off or not. And I think the watching, the product mature, and watching the marketing mature, and watching how Microsoft has positioned the product, and just it's the thing is the SharePoint community is fierce, and that's not just MVPs, that's partners, that's customers, everybody. And I think there was this love of this tool that happened that really has continued to keep it, out there up front. And there's also just nothing else like it. You've had other things come along that do little pieces of it, right? But there's nothing truly enterprise with, and especially with all the acquisitions, with bringing on Fast for Search and, bringing Yammer in as an acquisition, and, all the pieces of it are really the sum of the parts, and now with Teams, that's it's gone bananas, and it's really exciting to see that. And I've really had a lot of fun with learning teams and teaching teams and talking to people about it, and so it's been great. And it was, Jeff Teeper, such a great, lovely man. I really have so much respect for him, and I loved working for him, fairly directly through our team, but then also just through the years and having him come back has been really great. And I feel like Microsoft's also done a lot of cool things that I appreciate in that, I don't know, for a while it seemed sometimes you couldn't get to a Microsoft person, that it was very like closed off. And I think that that has shifted with Satya Nadella as our CEO for sure. And then also the user voice. So basically user voice is anytime you want to basically say, I want something in a product for a feature, or if you want to upvote something, and that user voice goes directly to the engineering teams of Microsoft, and they actually read it and they respond and they tell people, what's on the roadmap, when it's coming, and all that sort of thing. And so I feel like there's been an opening up of the Microsoft corporation as a whole that's been really great. And that to me has been one of the biggest changes over the years. And I also think it's probably influenced by the strength of some of our communities wanting that and wanting more connectivity with people and love for the partners. Microsoft partners make a lot of money for Microsoft, and that connectivity is really important. And I have definitely felt that and seen that shift with different people running the home, I think. So.
I've always felt that Microsoft got extremely lucky with the community that was built around SharePoint, because if you put MVP aside and you go onto the social networks and the forums, people are just so engaged, right?
Yeah.
Even if they're just normal users of SharePoint, they're contributing to issues, or they're contributing to user voice, things that you might not expect normal end users to do in another software application service. So I think the community has provided so much success for the SharePoint ecosystem. And everyone kind of just props it up and says, this is who we are. We are SharePoint people. We love it. It makes us productive, and that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's been super positive, and I think there's been points where the SharePoint community has been like, really? And I think that's good. You need checks and balances in everything you do, right? And so it's like, I think Microsoft is lucky in a way to have that strength of a community saying, hey, wait a minute, or yes, this is awesome, let's keep going, or whatever. So yeah, I agree with you completely. It's been really awesome to see.
I think the overall collaborative spirit of the community is unlike one I've ever seen. I mean, I've been working on computers since I was a kid, right? I mean, literally long time, too long to admit, and been part of a lot of communities. And just like Bo said, the collaborative spirit, everybody wanting to work together for the betterment of each other and understanding and helping. It's inspiring, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've been working up a presentation on belonging, because I work a lot with the diversity and inclusion with different event producers and at Microsoft and with the MVP community. And I think that's the thing that I really like about it, is that there is a sense of belonging to something as well. You don't have to be an MVP for it to be that way. It's people are influencers, people are leaders and thought leaders, people who are, vendors and partners and all of that stuff. There is, every time you go to an event, whether it's Ignite or Inspire or Build, and the third party events too, SP TechCon, SP Fest, and all the different folks who are doing great things around SharePoint, European SharePoint Conference, and it's global too. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing that I pretty much you were talking about travel, before I go to a city, I do two things. I do a few things, but a couple of things I do. One, I reach out to my MVP community, or I post on Facebook, hey, I'm coming to Copenhagen or whatever, and who's around, and who's there, who's in town. And it's my MVP community. And honestly, it's my Burning Man community, because I'm a burner and I do that whole thing too. And so like those two communities for me have been sort of the places of greatest belonging in my life. And they fold over because so many people who are tech people go to that event. But those are connections and places where I have felt the most, where it's like, hey, cool, come on, let's go to dinner, or stay and I'll give you a tour of my city, or whatever. And that is amazing. And I don't know many communities that have that kind of thing, and I don't think it's just for me, you know what I mean? It's, I make a point to network and know people, and I'm out front and I do a lot of speaking and stuff. So I'm pretty visible in the world, right? Of this world anyway. But I think that that's the case. When people come to town, they ping me. I live by the airport. They're like, hey, I'm coming to town. Can I, and I'm like, yeah, of course. Let's go I'll take you to my little favorite place over here, beachside and we'll go have, some fish tacos, right on, So it's cool. It's a really cool community, and I'm always very proud of it, and I'm very, very happy to belong to it. So.
Yeah, there's a tighter connection that's cross any boundaries, right? I had written about this recently. It doesn't matter if we're competitors. It doesn't matter if we're in different countries. Yeah. Everybody's willing to work together, and sometimes you got to work in odd hours, right? And that's okay, but you're willing to help each other, and that's the amazing thing. I mean, you take people like David and Simon in Sweden, and it's like, it's amazing the relationships that are built. And in some cases, like Simon, me, and I think Bo, you've never met him in person, right? We will at Summit here in a couple of weeks, but that's amazing. We've almost become friends without even meeting, which is amazing.
Oh yeah. I have so many people that's the case. Bo, is that the case with you too, where you've worked with somebody forever and then you meet them and you're like, wait a minute, we kind of know each other.
Yeah. And so like, that's what spurred this up too, was we were at New England last year, SPS New England, and there was a group of us who we've all talked online for a long time, but we've never met actually in person. And so I was like, I know what Dave's like technically. I don't know what Dave's like in his personal life. I don't know how I could talk to him about SharePoint, but we just spent the entire day talking about SharePoint. So what is the icebreaker that I can learn about David or Simon or whoever that I could just start a conversation with? And so that's one of the questions that I would like to ask you, is that if I'm coming up to you at a conference or someone else is, what type of icebreakers would you always love to talk about? Theater probably one.
Oh, yeah.
And other than handing you a coffee, right? Other than
theater and coffee.
I think that, I mean, just saying hello and introducing yourself and where you're from and what you do is just as easy as anything else, to be honest. I always think it's, I always appreciate it and giddy a little bit when people are like, hey, I read this thing, or I saw you do this or that, and it, moved me, sparked me, whatever, or that you liked it. You know what I mean? Because I put a lot of content in the world, and it's nice to know sometimes that people actually look at it. So that's always kind of cool, because that, you're like, I don't know,
Speaking of events and speaking, what do you have coming up this year, or what do you have planned for events you're speaking at, or?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of what I'm allowed to talk about. Okay. So, let's see. I'm doing a session at MVP Summit. The belonging session that I'm excited about, what Burning Man taught me about belonging. So, and also how how I use Teams and Planner and all of that for kind of all the facets of my life. So that's coming up. And I am going to, I went to India just for the first time for a friend's charity to go, the Alphabet Club, to go see how all of that runs. So I'm going to be putting together some things around that trip. That was my first time, and it was unbelievable. I have a lot of firsts this year, which I'm really excited about. So I'm also going to South Africa to see Alistair and Tracy, and we're doing SharePoint Saturday Johannesburg and SharePoint Saturday Cape Town, and we're going to drive from Jazi all the way to Cape Town and film it and stop along the way and do mini SharePoint Saturdays in these communities.
Oh, wow.
So I am over the moon excited, and we're going to film it, so it's going to be hilarious, I think. So I'm like,
that's
oh my goodness. Yeah. And then let's see what else. I'm speaking at the AIM conference. I'm leading a panel on building your personal brand down in San Diego at the end of March. I also am doing a panel, Our Superheroes Social Justice Warriors, for WonderCon at the end of March as well in Anaheim. I did that last year at Comic-Con, and they're having me back to repeat it, which I'm really excited about. We've got some amazing voice actors from all kinds of comics, and I'm still locking my panelists down, but I'm excited about that. And then I get to go to the Digital Workplace Conference in New Zealand for Debbie Ireland. So that's my first time to New Zealand, and that's the end. And that's all April. Like, wow. I'm just like, I'm like, what am I doing? And then SharePoint conference, of course, and I'm helping with the diversity and inclusion track there with that, the conference organizers, Bill Bear and Kathy Dew and Liz and Jennifer working on that. And then there's a couple other that I'm booked into, but they haven't announced it yet, so I'm not allowed to say. But
so you do a lot of speaking. Any advice for those who are looking to kind of want to get into that realm? But like you said, a lot of introverts in this industry. even myself, it's still, Bo and I were talking about this, how when you still get nervous, even if you've done it a lot, that means you care. So it's a good thing. But hard to get that first hurdle past them, right? So any advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think stage fright and butterflies absolutely are there for everybody in some way, and I think it is healthy. I think that it does show that you're caring, you're excited. Find also something that you're passionate about and know everything about it. That's the other thing. Confidence in speaking about something is because you know it, and you're not just pulling it out of the air. Let's say that.
Right. Well, you also said, which I appreciated, you had mentioned, is that don't just apply to other stuff, but they still need to apply, right? And you had mentioned on the questionnaire, you can't be chosen if you don't apply. And I think that's some of the biggest fear for people is, what if I don't get chosen? And I'm a big sports guy, obviously. Look behind me, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you think of like baseball players, it's always uncanny to me that home run hitters also usually lead the league in strikeouts. Right? So they're failing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't take failure or not being selected as okay, well, I can't ever do this again. You have to still kind of keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being someone who grew up in the theater, rejection is 90% of what happens to you. It's like you go in, you walk in an audition, and you don't even open your mouth, and they're like, next, and you're like, what the heck just happened?
Are they talking to who just left? I don't know. What did I do?
Right. Totally. You're like, okay, so yeah, absolutely. And failure, I don't believe in that word. I just don't. You fail hard, fail often, and forget about it and go to the next thing. So those of you who are in Los Angeles, we just, David is a part of this as well, and we just did a reset on the Los Angeles Office 365 and SharePoint user group. And so we had our first virtual meeting, which you can watch online at YouTube. So maybe that goes in the show notes. And and we're going to schedule those probably in person and virtual both. And so we're excited to kind of get that rocking soon. The next one, SharePoint Saturday Los Angeles, that is coming as well. There's going to be a SharePoint Caribbean. We're going to do probably Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. I'm on that committee as well. That might be later in the fall, which is very exciting.
My wife has nothing to do with SharePoint, but she might want to apply.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of open calls for speakers right now that I think are closing. I think SharePoint TechCon has one open for Boston. I think there's a digital workplace for Australia that might still be open. So there's a lot. And SharePoint Saturdays, just keep your eyes on that spsevents.org site for calls for speakers and the Twitter accounts. I have a bunch of those lists of different SharePoint Saturday user groups, Saturdays and user groups. I believe it's up on my Content Panda Twitter account. So you should go look at my Twitter lists on a couple of different places, and we can put those up on the show notes as well. So yeah, and I'm really proud of the podcast. We launched on Halloween, my favorite holiday, in New Orleans last year. We had 10 in the can, and I just believe that everybody has a beautiful story, and I love people who have made, are experts in their fields, and I love hearing about what sparks them and what's driven them to what they do. And so I was having all these cool conversations with friends and people, and was like, I should record these because these are amazing. And I started doing that. So I played for about 9 months figuring out equipment and marketing and all that kind of jazz. And I'm still learning along the way about, what it means to have a podcast. But yeah, we've done, I think, 23 episodes, something like that.
Wow.
Yep, I'm doing them weekly. They drop on Thursdays. You can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify. And we're doing all kinds of new stuff with them all the time, figuring out best ways and all of that. But Julia White, who's the corporate vice president of Azure Marketing, has been on. Lots of people in our SharePoint community, but their culture, their music, sex, tech, food, art, theater, the whole nine. So it's just extraordinary mavens, experts who bring a light to our world. So
very cool.
That's the podcast.
Very cool.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you for being on today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always nice and I think this is an important thing. So it's always good to be able to highlight all the personalities in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure, fellas. I appreciate it. So it's great. And thank you, everybody. Yeah.